Very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to yet another uLawPractice webinar. And today's topic, we're going to be discussing about the business reporting capabilities that uLawPractice as a legal accounting and practice management software provides. We're also going to briefly touch upon the different reports and documents that you as a legal professional generate, are obligated to generate, as well as the reports that would come in really handy for you as a business owner as well as a legal professional to keep ready for various different aspects of your business touch points. So right from audit reports to you understanding better about where your leads are coming from as a business owner, to your expense, your fee book, your profit and loss even. So really the whole 9 yards of legal business ownership, including compliance and audit ready documentation. We're going to spend a little bit of time in the product itself, and I'd like to highlight right up front that this particular webinar is not accredited for CPD credits, but we do have our CPD session next Friday, and we hope that you would join us for that session as well. It's going to be a very interesting CPD session for 1 hour of professionalism credits at no charge. Okay, but today is all about the business reporting capabilities of the uLawPractice software, but also highlight those reporting documentation that you need to keep in mind as you start to manage your practice. So like any other webinar, so does this webinar have an agenda for uLaw? And as mentioned, where there's about 30 plus reports that we have to cover within the next 45 to 50 minutes. Not only are we talking about reporting, but we're also talking about deep dive insights that the data provides, the data set provides, as well as actionable items that you can take based on what you see within those data insights. Okay, we're going to cover all those aspects of the reporting capability, and we've kind of broken it down into different silos, if you will, in terms of how you navigate right within uLaw. Okay, so if you really look at the menu structure, you have your contacts, there's really are your mini CRM. So we have reports at a contact level. Then you have your file management or your matter management within uLaw, and there are various different documents, reports that you can generate right within the matter. And then you have your accounting level reports, and this is where it gets really interesting with numbers and finances, both that are trust related, general related, can be related to your legal business, can be also related to your business in general, in terms of your office expenses, in terms of other expenses that you incur. So we're really going to highlight all of those different facets of the accounting level reports. And we have reports at your timeline or your calendar level. This talks about your work in progress over a time period. Could be monthly agendas, could be the weekly timesheets, if you will. So we're going to highlight what those look like. And last but not the least, we're going to stress upon the question mark, which is a very common feature across uLaw's matter management, and highlight all those matter-related analytics that are so important to you as you navigate yourself through uLaw. Okay, so this is kind of the overall agenda. It's going to be a bit overwhelming as we start generating these different reports, but I think this is going to be very meaningful and very insightful as well. As I continue down talking about this webinar, I highly encourage everyone who's joined me today to post their questions and use really the chat window to collaborate with us. I think we learn better as we collaborate within the legal society, and that's probably the best way that we can also learn. So kindly use the chat window to post all your questions, and our support staff would be available to answer them, and I can take questions at the end of the session as well. So really getting down to it, we're going to first look at the different contact reports. We're going to focus on the core reports that you can generate at a contact level. And when I talk about a contact, I'm really talking about a client that you've just added. You've just had a client intake. What are the different documents and reports that you can generate at that client level? One of the more interesting reports, which is almost a marketing report, if you will, is what we call as a source of contact. Now, other CRM systems call it lead source, or it could be a lead report. But the essence of that report is to provide you with the insight about where you're getting your leads from. And I'm going to showcase how we capture that information during the client intake process, as well as provide you with that insight. That allows and empowers solo business owners and practitioners who don't have the time to spend on these types of things to quickly understand where are they getting their leads from so that they can spend their marketing dollars more effectively based on the insight that they drive out of those data sets. Client fee book. So let's say your client would really like you to generate a quick fee book and send it to them. It's right there available under the contact so that either yourself or your colleague or your legal assistant can quickly navigate to that and generate the document and even email a digital copy of it to your client. Many times we see customers generate contact lists, and this is a really common report, and this outlines all of the different contacts that they have across multiple groups. Let's say you want to take a quick snapshot of all the defendants or the plaintiffs, or let's say even the representatives of opponents, the opposing party legal professional. You are able to do that. Okay, it gives you a better sanity check on the different parties that are involved in your legal life. So let's take a pause from a presentation mode and jump into the product so that I can highlight how these reports play in and how you would generate them. Okay, so let me quickly navigate out of that and jump into my uLaw. One thing you've probably noticed is we've tried to game up our security. Not only are we now 256-bit encrypted, bandwidth security, we've got our CAPTCHA that ensures that it's not an Autobot that's logging in. And towards the later half of the summer, we're going to be introducing the two-factor authentication as well. So uLaw is getting more secure and stronger. All right, so we looked at the contact report. So let me navigate into my contact panel. Now this is where you store all of your people and address information. And recently we worked on a specific client. Let me quickly search for that client. Steve Jobs. And for Mr. Steve Jobs, let's look at the different reports that you can generate. Now, two common verbs that you will come across in uLaw is the action button as well as the document generation button. Okay, so one of the reports that you can quickly generate, which is a Law Society requirement, we call it a generation, but it's really a report that highlights the different conflicts. Before I even jump into my source of contact, I wanted to highlight that a very important report out of the contact database is the conflict screening. Okay? When you actually click on conflict screening, uLaw provides both a very simple conflict screening check, which is predominantly on a first name, last name basis, as well as gets granular to actually check if even a matter has been created for such a name, and goes one step further and checks if you've ever come across the name Steve Jobs in another matter in the context of any conversations. So let's go ahead and do a deeper dive on that conflict screening report, okay, or that conflict screening report that we generate for you. And as I continue to generate that report, I'm going to start looking at giving you an example of where Steve Jobs information may be available. Okay, so let's quickly look at a client, Lisa Kudrow. Just setting the context here. So under Lisa's matter, there's a bit of a mention about a conversation within that Lisa matter was where we spoke about Steve and his Apple company. So that was just available in a totally different context for a different client called Lisa Kudrow. Okay. Now when I open that document, you're going to notice that obviously it's looking for Steve Jobs. It's got all his information. It has a few first name conflicts. There's a Steve Bond in this database, as well as there are a couple of matters that have been created with the name Steve. But it's most important to notice that a partial name has appeared in certain events and dockets, and one such is the Lista Immigration to Canada matter, and that's exactly this particular matter we're looking at, where the word Steve was mentioned within a docket. The reporting capability as well as the overall functionality of uLaw can take it to such a granular level. That way it can give you with the information you need to make that informed decision if there is a conflict or not to represent Steve Jobs. So we looked at the source of contact report. So if we were to click on document generation, right under the reports category, you have your source of contact report. Now this is for all of the contacts, not specific to Steve Jobs. So I will look at my quarterly report. So let's say starting April, May, June, I really want to know where are my leads coming from, okay? I really want to focus on this particular quarter, and then maybe I can do a bit of a comparison between how I'm doing from month to month or quarter to quarter. So you can see a quick snapshot of the overall referral pie chart, which really outlines where your sources of contacts are coming from. Where is that lead source arriving from? So a good 30% is miscellaneous. Obviously, it's not a great, it's not a best practice to put it as miscellaneous. You probably, as you do that client intake, you want to be a little bit more particular about, what that lead source is. You can see about 21% are from personal referral, about 21% from client referral, and you've got a bit of word of mouth and advertisement. Now, the source of contact is a very important field that we capture during your client intake process. But it's not a mandatory field. So just in case you've forgotten to add that, it's marked as not categorized. There's about 13 of them. Okay? And we also give you an outline of the individuals that are involved. So if I look at Bill Gates, there's really no source of contact. So I may want to just go right back in, search for Bill Gates, okay, by using our search, and edit the contact. And right within the client intake form is where you see the source of contact. And you can quickly say there's an employee referral program, and in the notes section, we talk about where did that reference come from, or maybe it was a personal referral. We have different options right from Google search to other websites that particular lead source may have arrived. So really the habit is as you do that client intake, or as your assistant or legal colleagues take that client intake, make it a habit to actually ask your client, how do they get to know about you? Okay? Having that information makes that report that much more meaningful. Moving along, so we looked at the conflict report. We obviously looked at the source of contact. And let me get into Mr. Steve Jobs, one of the clients that we looked at. And for this particular Steve Jobs contact, let me generate a client fee book. And I'll date it. It's obviously dated to today. And it's prepared by everyone who is in my office. So if once you add individuals as colleagues or as what we call here as co-workers, the list of 13 members is what's listed here. Anybody who actually is logging into uLaw would use that. Let me go ahead and download a particular client fee book, and here's that report. So you can obviously add a tax number, and it would populate that automatically. It was just a quick flat fee for Mr. Steve versus Bill Gates fence issue, and actually it has your information in. It has Mr. Steve Jobs' information as well, and you or your legal assistant could quickly sign this, depending on who prepared it, and then basically email it to Mr. Steve Jobs. Okay. So we just flipping between the product as well as what we looked at. So we looked at the source of contact, the client fee book, and the contact list is really just a quick list. If I were to go to list of contacts, I can either generate an individual contact's information So it's just a quick PDF of Steve Jobs' information, right? Mr. Steve Jobs, that's his information, and his source of contact. That's where he came from as a client. Now, I would be benefited if I could actually do it by a group. As you know, within uLaw, you could create your own groups. So if I were to go to list of contacts one more time, and instead of choosing an individual, I want to look at all my clients, or let's say I want to look at all my ghost clients, okay? Or a quick example would be all the plaintiffs that I've necessarily represented. And what that does is it looks at that particular group and lists out by name all those different people that are in that particular group, right from David Green to Maria. Their information, email, phone number. So it's just a quick, handy report that allows you to generate contact lists right from your contacts database. Okay? So that's all we wanted to cover within our contact reports. So moving along, as part of our agenda, we wanted to also talk about the matter-related reports. And you're obviously going to notice, as we continue down this path, the number of reports, the sensitiveness of the documentation, as well as the overall benefit of those documents gradually starts to increase. So now we're looking at reports that you may now be able to generate at a matter level. Okay? So let me choose a contact that would kind of give us enough example. So let me look at Lisa Kudrow. A really good example because I have quite a bit of information. Let me jump now into the matter for Lisa Kudrow. Okay? You can see obviously you have certain dockets. There are quite a few disbursements, and there's no parties involved. But let's take that example of the different reports that you can generate for that individual matter. So you've got your timeline reports, statement of activity. So this is a very common report that legal professionals are always being asked by their end clients. Can you give me a quick statement of activities that you've done for my file so far? We also generate legal aid report within the format that it's being expected to be submitted in. So we'll have a look at that as well. We've tweaked our matter level reporting with analytics. So I'm going to show you real quick. At each matter level, you can kind of do a deep dive, take the weekend to really understand how you worked on that matter, what you could have done better with timelines, what you could have done better with the actual documentation that went behind with it. You can now generate timesheets for that individual matter. Not only can you generate timesheets for your overall legal firm, for everyone that's involved, you're now also able to generate timesheets at a matter level. You've got accounting level analytics for that particular matter, and along with the statement of activity, another very popular document that we've seen legal professionals send across to clients is the bill of cost. And our goal at uLaw is to make generating these reports a breeze and almost a click of a button. Okay? Under document generation is where you would have most of the reports and documents that you can generate for a particular matter once you've arrived within the context of that matter. So I've come into this matter screen, and my client is Lisa Kudrow. I could actually have multiple matters for Lisa, but I'm really just looking at this immigration file that I created for her. And we looked at that first one, which was the statement of activity. Let me just go ahead and click that. Now you can do that for the entire matter, or you can generate a statement of activity for a date period. So you have that option of choosing a date range. You can date it for today, and again, someone else within your office could have generated that on your behalf. You just have to choose who that is. You have the option of whether you want to show the description, which is of all the work that you've done within those individual dockets. So these are the descriptions that you've actually highlighted. You have the option of either showing it or not. And you can customize this document as part of our branding experience of the documents that you send to your clients. The whole branding experience. You can actually have your own banner, your logo, one of them, both of them, however you like. And this is very configurable within uLaw. So it has a statement of activity number. That's the title, which is really the matter title. And this is a very important document. And instead of scampering to put together this document, it's just readily available to you at a click of a button. It's got the Lisa Kudrow file number, and if you added a tax number, it would be made available court file number as well. And it really outlines and lists out the work that has been done for that date range that you specified, and also outlines the actual estimated hours and the billed hours. Okay? And one of the popular reasons why we have that is many times we understand that legal professionals tend to spend more time than they actually charge. And many times it's a great way of showing how you're working the extra mile for your client by demonstrating that on paper. So mostly it's the other way around. It was just a very perfect example of where the actual hours are more than the billed hours. Traditionally it's the other way around. And you would sign this, has the total billable hours. It would have other components as well. You would sign this, and you can send this to your client, Lisa. So moving along, we looked at some of the other reports. Bill of costs, right under statement of activity. Now this document has the same information as title, file number, tax number, etc. But the way it represents the overall financial information of the dockets as well as the overall matter is slightly different, because this talks about legal fees. It kind of, I would say, demarcates the overall fees or the finances as legal fees, as disbursements. You can see those are the two legal fees, along with the HST that's being raised for that particular transaction. Disbursements incurred. You've got your application fee. You've got a Law Pro invoice. That's your total. So the bill of costs has that granular bifurcation, if you will, or categorization of the overall finance information. Now let's have a look at our legal aid report, which is really interesting. And it's all available under document generation. Right here you have your legal aid report. Again, can be for the complete matter or a date range, and you can actually provide this information in. If you provide that information prior, we'll probably have that as well. There you go. Now this template, as I understand, is the template that's expected, especially in the province of Ontario, in the format that it's expected in. So you've got all the information, solicitor number, tax number, date. It outlines by hours and the service that was conducted, dockets, telephone conversation, the total billable hours, and if there were multiple individuals involved in servicing this client, this legal aid report will also outline that. Okay. Then you've got your disbursements divided as the amount, subtotal, and the taxes involved. So it really gives you a complete picture in a format that's acceptable for legal aid. A more recent addition where we're looking to fine-tune and tweak this is, again, this is almost a weekend report for you to understand the timeline that this matter has taken. If I were to generate that timeline report, this quickly illustrates where this all began. Obviously, if it's a quick and easy matter which just started yesterday and closed today, you're obviously not going to have much of an information here because it's going to be a quick graph. But really the starting point of it was the 15th of May when that retainer was received. Okay? And you've got the new retainer, another refund that was paid out the same day, another retainer was received, an application was charged. So this really outlines everything that has happened in a very time-sensitive chronological order. Okay, so it starts with the Monday when you receive that first retainer to the Wednesday when the matter was done, the document review, and that was kind of the last work that was accomplished. And we looked at the timesheet being one of those matter-related documents, again, for the entire matter or particular date range. That's another very interesting report or a document that you can generate for that particular matter. You can always generate timesheet, and I'll show that to you later on within a calendar, if you will, because these are, again, documents that are easy for you to generate and send it in context to your clients. And if you actually look at the overall information, it's the same thing. It's the item description, estimated hours, but it also highlights the individual, because this is a timesheet, really the individual who actually did that work. Again, keep in mind if there are multiple legal professionals involved with multiple rates, that would be highlighted as well. It also puts a nice summary, the total services provided by that individual legal professional. In this case, this was just Mr. Roger Moore. Okay. Now, if I were to look under statements, okay, you can see there are quite a few subcategories of reports that you can generate under statements. The first would be the trust statement. So for that particular matter, Lisa Kudrow, here is your trust ledger. It talks about every trust touch point, the $500 that was received, another $500 was a refund, another retainer that was received, the disbursement. So it really is a quick and easy way for you to generate those trust ledgers, right, under document generation statements. You can generate your trust, general, as well as settlement. There you go. Has the overall information in terms of the retainers, divided by the legal fees, as well as the disbursements. And most importantly, the invoice payments from trust. Okay, so this is a further classification or a deeper dive, if you will, of that overall document, about how invoice payments from trust evolved, and any invoice payments from general. You received that $92 that was paid, or in fact that was paid into Lisa Kudrow's general account. As a quick summary of the trust specific to that matter. And last but not the least is the document that you can sign off on. Okay, so it's the same information, but if you notice, it's very interesting because the same information is being represented in various different templates, really depending on who is asking for that report and what that purpose of that report is. So it's two key prerequisites for you to generate any report within uLaw is who's asking for it and what is the purpose. Okay. And if I were to look at a template, again, this is mostly used by real estate lawyers, the settlement and the accounts. And this was not a specific example for that, but it follows the same format in terms of what's expected out of that real estate transaction. Okay, legal fees, disbursements. And it's very important to note that all of these documents, all of these reports, mostly that are client-facing, goes back to the ability that we provide our clients to brand. It's equally important that you're generating all the documents, providing all the financial information, but all under the context of the brand that you as a legal office provide. Okay? So going back to our presentation, so we looked at the timeline reports, we looked at the statement of activity, the legal aid report, matter level reporting, we looked at the timesheet, and the accounting level analytics and the bill of cost. Moving along, again, highly encourage you to ask your questions using our chat window as our support staff are available. Under some of the documents, some of the Law Society documents that you can generate, again, many times these are documents but can be not related to the financial reporting as well. A conflict screening report is really you outlining how you determined that Lisa was not a particular, there was no conflict in representing Lisa as well. So this is a report that the Law Society requests you to have in file every time you have a client that you've mattered. Okay, and we pre-populate as much as information as possible. You could say there was no conflict. I did not refer Lisa to another person, and you would sign this and you would file this. Okay, so that's another very important report under document generation called the conflict screening report. Let's move along. So we've kind of covered, if you will, some high-level contact reports. One of the highlighting aspects of that was the source of contact. It can really help you with your marketing dollars and expenditure there. Once you've generated a matter for that client or that contact, then you have a new set of reports and documentation that we looked at that are very matter-specific. Mostly those are reports that are requested by the client either during the transaction itself or after the fact. Okay, so various different representation of the financial information and the work that's being put in within that matter. Now let's jump into, before I move into the accounting reports, I also want to touch base on the timesheets. I think there's a quick question in the chat window about how you generate timesheets, as well as the summary level reporting. So before I get into the accounting reports, I will talk about, I think this is the question, is really how do you generate the daily, weekly, work in progress timesheet and the overall client and service summary. And all that's available because it's a timeline-based report under our calendar. And after I do that, I'll jump into the accounting reports. So between the quick view and the calendar is where you can find most of the work in progress. So let's say I want to look at my monthly work in progress report. I would just choose for this particular month of May all the work that's either planned or has been accomplished. So if you look at that, you have your title, your actual client, the last activity date, and the unbilled hours. Okay? And if there's any flat fee, you've got that as well. You've got about 8 clients, which is a work in progress that's been planned, and there's unbilled hours for about 6 hours and 25 minutes right here. Another important question that has been asked is how do you generate a list of all of your active files, which is also very similar to the list of contacts that we generated as a report. You have the opportunity to quickly generate a list of all of your active matters. Okay, and that's at all times you want to be on top of your active matters. Because many times it's the first report that's being asked when you're being audited is give me a list of all of your active matters. Within uLaw, as you probably know, you do have the ability to classify matters as active, closed, and archived, and this is one of the reasons why we did that. So it's simple for you to quickly look at active, and if they're going to ask you for all your matters, you can just choose that, starts to list it, okay, right from the first matter that you created within uLaw. So let me look at, I'm going to say document generation, and instead of work in progress, I'm just going to print this overall list. And I'm just, instead of saying, I could either do all matters, or I could do a list of matter for 1 month between April to May. And this is a document or a report that becomes very handy. You do have a visual document, almost a digital copy of it here, which takes you into it, but this is more of a paper representation or a printout representation of it. You've got your file number created on, and this is in these, in the different, I think you can, in the settings, pretty much plan how you want to configure this. But the two important pieces of information that the law says they would ask for is when was that file created and when was the last modified. So really, when did you touch that file last? Okay, so there's two pieces of information that we capture apart from the file number and the client. You can see this list. You can generate this in a click of a button and have that ready if you're being asked about it. And going back to the other question that was being asked on the calendar, you have the different documents that you can print, the same work in progress that we generated at the quick view level. But now here's where you can generate the timesheet for your overall legal firm. You can generate it by employee. Okay, so let's say for the entire quarter, I want to generate my timesheet by employee. I could do that, click of a button. I could do a client summary, which is one of the most important documents that's being asked, along with statement of activity as well as bill of costs. But let's look at it one at a time. And as I mentioned, I know that this is a bit overwhelming. Just keep in mind that if there's information in uLaw, you potentially have a report that spits it out, really. Right from 2nd of May, you now have individual different lawyers or legal professionals that are part of that mix, right? Obviously, this is a huge report. But this is the summary. Summary is you've had those many hours and minutes billable and estimated, and that's the quick mix of everyone that's involved. Okay. I can now generate a client and service for the overall month if that's the only specific request. When we generated these different reports, these different documents, was always keeping in mind a very pragmatic outlook of the documentation that you are expected to generate as a legal professional. Okay, so this is for your entire law firm for that particular date range. I hope that answered that question, and I'm just going to move along to, and obviously the timesheet employee, which I showed you, is a newer report that pretty much outlines by employee what the effort is. Again, if it's a solo, then we get it, then it's just one information, but if it's a mix of individuals that are getting together, then that would be a great document to have as well, because you exactly know what you're bringing to the table as a partner. Going back to my presentation, one of the most significant areas that we spend a lot of time, because we are an integrated legal accounting and a business accounting software, we now have the responsibility, if you will, of keeping in task or keeping in mind the different components that both legal accounting products provide, as well as business accounting like QuickBooks and others provide like Xero. Okay, so we've kind of combined it into one software. And the purpose of that is we believe in combining the legal accounting and business accounting, you are now able to provide that single source of truth. And we're all talking about, do I need to now mix and match multiple systems to give me that single source of truth? But by integrating it to one platform, you are now able to have a very candid outlook about both your revenue as well as your expense. Instead of having to deal with it in two different systems, you have it in one system. But the only flip side to that, as a software provider, we obviously need to be cognizant and keep in mind the different reporting capabilities that the software needs to now provide to live up to that expectation. Okay, so this is a growing list of documents, and every time I do this webinar, there's always something new that's being added to the mix. So for example, from the last time I generated this or delivered this webinar to now, we now have general reconciliation. Before we only had the trust reconciliation. Now we have the capability for you to upload your bank statement after it's done every week, every day, every month, and we can now help you reconcile and generate a general reconciliation report as well. Okay. Outside of that, and that's something new for this webinar, but outside of that, the standard reports that we provide This is just a quick snapshot at a minimal, right from your HST report. That's interesting because that truly combines your legal accounting and your business accounting. Because as legal accounting, you're raising an invoice, you're actually collecting legal, as part of that revenue, you're collecting that HST. But as a business, you may be actually spending HST. And if you are a business that's incorporated and has a HST number and you do have to file that, combining that in one software is going to give you the power so that you know exactly what that number is that you're writing a check for or should receive. Okay, so let's take an example of that as well. But HST report, you've got your ledgers. We've got our compliance panel, which really outlines all of the reports that you're expected from an audit perspective to generate on a monthly basis, right? So we're going to look into how quickly you can generate those. Your trust ledgers, general journals, expense ledger, trial balance, all of that is part of it. But then you as a business owner may have the insight or the need to generate documents or reports that highlight the hygiene of your business. So you're talking about a pro bono report. Very recently we spoke to one of the writers from the Canadian Bar Association, where the CBA is taking a huge task to really educate legal professionals as to how you can minimize your non-billable hours. Okay, what are the strategies and tactics that you can follow so that you minimize that? And one of the things that we mentioned, and what we do best, is at first really give you an insight to track and measure those non-billable hours. Okay, so at a click of a button, uLaw generates that pro bono report or that non-billable hour report that tells you that, hey, Roger, these are the areas specifically in these silos of practice is where you tend to make that habit of providing your clients with pro bono or free hours. Right? Invoice balance. You don't want to be scampering to really understand who owes you what money in what format. We've helped legal professionals across Ontario make money. Like they've had money sitting in their trust account for almost a couple of months, leading up to about $5,000. And the report, such as the invoice balance report, really highlights and gives you a quick snapshot of what to expect in terms of revenue generation. Receivables, again, payables, as a business, that's all part of your business too. So let's look at them one at a time, but I think you get the picture by now. Let's jump into uLaw, and we're going to jump into accounts. And that's where all the reports are. Now let's take a quick example. Why don't I just go to Steve Jobs, right? Jump into his matter. And I'm going to add a new event. I'm going to say second client meeting, and I'm going to give this 1 hour. So let's say you spend 2 hours on it, very typical, but you're billing him 1 hour. And that's about $150, right, plus tax. So right now, you're just charging him $150 plus tax, and that's $169.50. Now let's say at the same token, you're actually dispersing the client too. You're doing a general disbursement. Let's assume it's part of that equation, right? Like you're a legal professional, you know exactly what I'm doing here. You just raised a docket, and now you're just going to disperse this client. Now let's say it's for fax, a classic example. You can see how that quickly changed into a unit rate. I'm going to say it's 100 faxes that I have to do for this guy. And though my standard rate is $1, I'm going to charge him $1.25. And I'll probably add the tax too. Traditionally, you don't charge that, right? You don't really expense that to your business because you have your fax machine right at work. Assuming, let's say, that one particular day, your fax machine broke down, right? Just hypothetical, and you had to run to the nearby Walmart or Staples or whatever that store was to fax that on behalf of Steve Jobs. In that case, you probably spent, let's say, they asked you to pay $140. That included and $18.20 tax. It's very important to keep in mind that this is the HST that you have now paid as a business, right? And you probably paid out of your credit card, and you paid it to, let's say, Staples Inc. So not only are you capturing now the HST that you received from Steve Jobs, you're now capturing the HST that has been paid for that Steve Jobs matter, right? All within this one system. That's your credit card transaction. So it's important to note those two numbers. There's $18.20 of tax that you just paid, and there's about $19.50 of tax HST that you just collected. Now let's take a more contextual HST report. So right under accounts, document generation, tax, HST. For that, let me just quickly invoice this guy. It's very important that you invoice the individual. Because if you've not invoiced it, which is the legal document, only you know what the work you've done. So for the world to know and for your client to know the work that you've done, you need to raise that invoice. All right, so now that I've generated that invoice, let's have a look at that invoice. You've got that second client meeting, $150, and you just collected $19.50 in tax. There was a fax. Very important to know that you did charge him for that, but this is different from the office expense that you incurred. Now let's go back to accounts, document generation, tax, HST, and let me just do it for the month of May. Traditionally, you would do it for a quarter, or really depending on how you've set up, if at all you have HST. And for those who don't have that HST, this is just great information to keep in mind. When your company does grow to that extent, it sure will. You will have to have and come back and do this. Okay? Let's go back to today's date. So here are the two HSTs that you collected from Steve Jobs, the $19.50 for the legal fee and the $16.25 that you collected for that fax. But very important to note, you also paid that $18.20 from Mr. Steve Jobs' fax disbursement. Right at the top, the HST you've paid as a business, HST that you received as a business. We balance that and we tell you that you owe the government $749.80 for this particular month. And this is not easy. This is, it looks simple, but I think, depending on your lifestyle, depending on the areas of practice, if you do have a lot of disbursements, and if you do have a HST, you will appreciate the amount of work that gets done behind the scene to give you that one number, right? So moving along, we looked at the HST report. So you could have individual trust general ledgers generated for clients, or the most common format is that you generate it for a month and you sign off on it. What we've done is we've taken the ledgers, the journals, and the balances, really the top three areas of compliance, along with the trust reconciliation, because those are law societies, audit documents, and we've added that all under this compliance panel. You have your trust, your general, your journals, as well as the other documents that you need. Now let's look at a client's trust. Click of a button. You can either do monthly, but a very common question we're always asked is, how do I generate a particular ledger for an individual client? And we did look at that at the matter level. You can go into that matter and generate that trust statement as we looked, or even simpler is you can come in here and type in the name of that individual. And we always look at the most recently used matter, Lisa Kudrow, and you can hit download. So that's pretty much it. Okay, so that is your trust ledger. The general is very similar. I'll do the month, or let's say for an individual. And here's your general ledger for that particular matter. And if you wanted to do it for all clients across a date range, you can do that as well. And very similarly, you would do your trust receipt, your general receipt, trust payments, disbursements. These are all different documents and reports that all represent information in a slightly different way. Okay, so for example, trust receipt for Lisa Kudrow really talks about all. Let me quickly generate that trust receipt for Lisa Kudrow. These are all documents that your auditors are going to ask you for. So I know it's a lot of documentation, a lot of reporting that's being done within a span of 45 minutes. But thankfully, we are recording this session, and you are able to play it back. And so here's your trust receipt. Really outlines how she paid for all that trust money that went into that trust account. So there's a retainer of $500 that she paid in cash. There's another retainer that she paid as a credit card, and that's the credit card number. In fact, there was a third retainer that she paid in check. Check number was 55. That's one of the really key documents that your auditor is going to ask you for, is show me the trust receipt. Okay? General receipt. So on and so forth. Who knew? Legal profession was that easy, eh? But here's all the documentation that goes behind running a legal business. And what we've tried to do is we're trying to let you focus on the core business, which is lawyering or paralegaling. I don't even know if that's a word, but you get the point. And we're trying to take care of all of your behind-the-scenes documentation and the audit documents and all those mundane tasks away from you by automating it using a software. It's on the cloud, it's available anywhere, very cost-effective, Canadian. So here's a list of your general receipts, right? The amount that was paid, any disbursements, any client payments that client payment was made through cash. I think you get the picture. So we have another 6 minutes in our presentation, and I want to go back into my presentation and kind of show you. So far, we've kind of covered the HST report, the different ledgers, the general. The trial balance sheets are all equally important documents, more so from your business perspective. Now, let's take a look at some of the business reports. In the last 5 minutes that we have, let me quickly highlight all of those reports that are very key and close to your heart from a business perspective, including the pro bono and invoice balance. Let me go back into accounts. So you have your trial balance revenue sheet, but I'll quickly generate a profit and loss report, and I'll do it for this particular month. I'll also include the analytics. This quickly generates my profit and loss statement with my revenue and expenses for this particular month of May. Tells me the different areas of practice where I received that money from. So immigration was one of my top areas of practice that I received close to about $4,000 of revenue. Family law, POA, HTA. So if you are a legal professional managing multiple silos, this one document really gives you a good outline of where your money is coming from across those different silos, right? So you don't have to really scratch your head at the end of the day to generate something like that. We also try and highlight all the expenses that you've had for this month. So really make it a habit to generate such a document at the end of every week, month, really depending on how busy you are, so that you're always on top of your books. In many businesses, we always look at everyone above us, but it's always important to look at people who are doing, harder work to get to where we are. In many businesses where they only deal with cash, they have to do something like this and reconcile on a daily basis. So we should be thankful that we're not doing it necessarily at a daily basis, though it's kind of the utmost discipline that you could have. But yeah, again, speaking out loud, here's all the expenses and about a $6,000 profit that business has made for the month of May so far. When we spoke about the pro bono report, a very, very important report, and it's right under here under Other, and you can generate it for the month, for the quarter, the year. And this is another document that you are able to submit to the Law Society or to other associations that take this into consideration. In one snapshot, we tell you that's the total number of pro bono hours that you have provided across all your clients. It also lists out the different clients. So really, George Armani was the recipient of your Good Samaritanship, right? Biggest recipient for about 5 hours of work, really. You can do that for multiple date ranges. And one of the most important reports of everything, again, all of this is great, but one report that you probably generate every day is the invoice balance report. This at all times tells you how many clients owe you money, who is that guy who owes me money, and if I've not done a trust transfer, then it's on me, but we highlight that as well. You've generated the invoice. The money could either be a payment that's owing, or it could be money sitting in trust under the status of pending trust transfer. Keep in mind that this is a playground account with millions of records, so probably have to give it a couple of more seconds. But I highly encourage you to please start asking your questions at this time as I keep rambling away towards the end of this webinar. I would take this probably as the last report. We'll give you some really insight tidbits as well, some interesting ones. Who is the oldest unpaid invoice? The client with the highest balance so far. So Tom Rodney, amazing guy. He owes us $21,600 right now since 1st of November. And the client who owes you the most is that guy. But this one report tells you the clients, the last activity date, the balance, and how is that balance spread out? Is it everything that the client owes you in payment? So this is a payment that goes right into your general account? Or are there pending trust transfers? So this one column, last but one column, there's about $39,000 of money sitting in my trust that I've earned, and I've just not moved it to general. So that's the kind of insight that report provides you. Okay, so just a quick recap. So uLaw, being a legal accounting and practice management software, gives you that power that you need to generate documents, reports that are more meaningful to your business, but even more important for the compliance and the audit readiness that you need as a legal business. And I would stop my webinar right now, and I highly encourage you to participate in our next upcoming webinar, which is a 1-hour professionalism CPD credits. Please do participate and ask the questions and do collaborate. And we do have a survey that we've posted on our chat window, and we kindly request you to fill that and provide us your prudent feedback so that we can be better at what we do. Thank you very much, and have yourself a great weekend. I do open the chat window for any questions. Perfect. The first question is this being recorded? Absolutely. Every uLaw webinar is recorded, and if you've participated today, you will receive an email. That's why we ask you to send us that survey result so that we know you participated, and we can send you a link to it. If not, you will find it under our YouTube channel called youtube.com/uLawPractice under our webinar playlist. Okay, we have another question. How different is the analytics engine compared to the reports? That's a good question. It is the engine remains to be the same. So we have what we call as a business reporting engine that really sits behind the scenes, that's really collecting the data, and it's making those transactional data available to you. But the representation of that data is really where it differs. Now, if I were to, the reports are mostly, as I mentioned, these paper-based, old school, still have a meaningful reason for it, like your audit reports. These are reports that really auditors and the Law Society wants you to provide it to them in paper or show it in a specific format that they're used to reading these documents in. The analytics is pretty much the same information, but it's being represented to you. Like an auditor would not really appreciate you showing them the analytics, but you as the business owner would certainly look at the analytics to be better at your business and really know where you're missing out or where you're making your money. But for example, the pro bono that one report that we did, pro bono by hours, you can generate that as a quick analytical item for this particular month. It's going to be the same data, right? But the representation is different. And then we have a little bit more different data sets, for example, your expenses and whatnot. So this was for the month of April. You've got 67% of billed hours, about 32% of pro bono. And you can do it by clients too. Probably change it to May, but again, you can do it by clients too. So the analytics and the reporting engine all get data out of the business reporting engine. It's just a different visualization of the data. And again, it really comes down to who's asking for that data and the purpose. Okay. Maybe I'll take one more question as we wrap up this webinar. Okay, source of contact. I think that's the last question for the day. How do I generate a source of contact, and how do I include new categories? Okay, I think what you mean. Okay, let me rephrase that question. The question was about how do I add new categories to my source of contact, and how do I generate that report? Good question. So this is a preset list of categories, a good range of categories through which you could receive a client. If there are additional categories that you'd like to be added, please feel free to send it to us, and we'll be more than happy to add it for you. But this pretty much covers the various different facets of. If you don't find that, you can always put as other program, other advertising, and really use the notes section to expand on it. And where would you find that report? Is right under document generation, reports, source of contact, and you can do this over a date range. It really gives you that spread up. And the last thing I wanted to mention before I wrap up this webinar, something I mentioned before, is if by some reason you've not mentioned, the category in which that contact comes under, we also list that right under the not categorized list, so that you can always update it. And we highly encourage and recommend that you always capture the source of contact. That's only going to make your lead generation insight that much more powerful. With that being said, thank you very much for participating in today's webinar. We hope you have a fantastic long weekend, and we look forward to seeing you in our webinar next Friday. Thank you.